Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that if you're returning. How you doing? Grab your coffee. Carrot cake. It's a carrot cake type of day, isn't that? And let's get into it, okay? So this subscriber, she emailed me. And one of her family members finally got it. She did. So listen to this. She said, North Dakota again. She said, my sister is most definitely happy. To a point. She kept teasing and goading me about prepping and all the groceries in my house. We've all been there, have we not? She said, oh, it won't be that bad. She's not saying that now. Boy, is she having a new tune this week. A blast from the past bill from over 14 years ago hit her. All of a sudden, her bank account was emptied out this past weekend. If she wouldn't have shut it down, she would have been over $6,000 in the hole. Anyway, she wound up penniless. She works at the same place as me, paid every 2 weeks. I kept telling her, what? Stock up. Buy one extra piece, keep doing it. No money, no food, almost empty tank of gas, and now it hits her. All she says is, what am I going to do? Well, I have an idea. I agreed to help her this time around. A bag of groceries, she'll pay me back, gas in the tank. And yes, you will be at work. And then we will go shopping together next Friday so I can show her. 1 is none, 2 is 1. Might as well make it 3. Moral to the story, doesn't have to be a food shortage. It can be financial attack, storm related, flooding issues. Keep prepping. Thank you. Thank you. Because, you know, we all get made fun of. Or, well, if shit ever hits the fan, we'll just come to your place. Nay, nay. Right? Why does it take something like this for people to eyes open? Why? So, on to this. On to this. In the bombshell news of the week, the big R, right? The natural gas exporter, Gazprom, okay, exactly as promised, is shutting off gas flows to nations whose gas importers refuse to pay for gas in rubles. Now, gas flows for Poland, Germany are halted, okay? Confirmed by Bloomberg and other outlets. Poland's officials are currently in a state of hilarious denial, claiming they have enough reserves to keep gas flowing into homes, but utterly failing to mention that there won't be enough gas to power the electricity generation hubs or industrial customers that keep the country's economy flowing. The situation is even more dire in Germany, where officials there have agreed to export tanks to the big R, even though they aren't even really tanks. So it appears that Germany is emptying its museums of old hardware, their war museums of old hardware, while demanding that the big R keep selling it gas in euros. Even though Germany and other Western nations have declared R can no longer use euros or dollars due to the extreme economic sanctions leveled against R by the West. So these bullying tactics of the West are turning out to be disastrously catastrophic for Western nations. And Germany faces the near total annihilation of its industrial base if it can't somehow replace our natural gas deliveries or find a way to pay in rubles. And the collapse of the German industry will take a generation to recover, if ever. Since shutting down manufacturing businesses and liquidating their assets usually involves selling off hardware and losing the human knowledge base of how to run that hardware. All this for virtue signaling against R, it seems. And Germany would rather commit economic suicide than allow R to earn another ruble in revenue for its gas exports. Not that R is desperate for revenues, of course, since our energy sales are booming and year-over-year revenues for R are exploding to the upside due to sharply rising energy prices for the global market. And yet China and Turkey and India and most other nations around the world, they're happy to keep buying energy from R, even if Germany and Poland and the UK and the US, they refuse to do so. So the reality of this sad and pathetic tactic by NATO nations is that the big U, has become a dumping ground now for outdated, nearly museum-era military hardware that NATO nations are desperately trying to get rid of while claiming to be assisting the big U. And Poland is delivering an unknown quantity of some sort of tanks to the big U, and Germany is delivering museum-era anti-aircraft tracked vehicles to them, and the Czech Republic is delivering some outdated T-72 tanks. The UK is sending Stormer armored vehicles with anti-aircraft missiles. Slovenia is also reportedly sending some T-72 tanks as well. Now, what they're actually accomplishing is the mass deaths of Ukrainian soldiers. And their forces have almost zero training in these oddball pieces of equipment, except perhaps the T-72s, okay? There are virtually no repair parts available to keep these things running, since they're not in production anymore. There is very little ammo available for the hardware, and the ammo is almost impossible to deliver to the battle lines, okay? There's no interoperability between all this oddball hardware coming from different nations, different eras, different manufacturers, etc. And they don't use the same parts. Their comms are all set up differently. Their maintenance requirements are not unified. Their tracks are not interchangeable. It's like a joke. And many of these pieces of equipment have sat in warehouses for decades, experiencing internal engine rust from water accumulation in diesel engines and component rust. It's questionable whether these vehicles will even survive the first 30 days of actual use without breaking down and becoming multi-ton paperweights. So, that's just, everything is just questionable when it comes to this. It really is. So, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So, oh, Lord, on to this. Okay, so this subscriber, she wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because, in a video that I did a few days ago, we were talking about seeds and, if they were heirloom or GMO and stuff like that. And she said, Monsanto started this over 20 years ago. So that could, tried or areas that don't have growing conditions could have better yields. She said she was in Italy in 2002 and recalled taking a trip to the Monsanto plant. General public can't go there, but she was tagging along with a professor of hers who was escorting college and art and business majors. And everyone thought the concept of GMOs was fabulous. She didn't. So go ahead, and she said, grow your GMOs in your areas that need yield assistance. But for a country like the United States, keeper of heirloom organics, etc., it's really hard for the American consumer to stay away from them because GMOs are in everything. And she said the government put pressure on farmers to use GMO seeds or they wouldn't get their farming benefits. And whatever else they receive is supplements from the government. And a bunch of farmers tried to fight it, but it was like awful things were done to them because of the retaliation. She said, I'm sure you can Google the articles and find out more about it. So then on to this. All right, so Goya. Okay, do you have Goya products in your pantry? I do. Okay, so listen to this. All right, Goya, the CEO of Goya, warns the world on the brink of a food crisis. Okay, the CEO, he spoke on Mornings with Maria. Okay, and he argued that the world has weaponized food. He said, we are on the precipice of a global food crisis. Inflation accelerated to a new 4-decade high in March, okay, with supply chain constraints, the conflict and strong consumer demand fueling rapid price gains that wiped out the benefits of rising wages for most Americans. And the Labor Department said earlier this month that the Consumer Price Index, which measures a bevy of goods, including gas, healthcare, groceries, rent, rose 8.5% in March from a year ago, and the fastest pace since 1981, when inflation hit 8.9%. Prices jumped 1.2% in the month period from February, and the largest month-to-month since 2005. So prices increases were widespread, and energy prices rose a stunning 11% in March from the previous month and are up 32% from last year. Gas, on average, cost 48% more than it did last year after rising 18.3% in March on a monthly basis, as the conflict fueled a rapid increase in oil prices. So food prices have also climbed 8.8% higher over the year and 1% over the month, with the largest increases in cereal and bakery products, which was 10%, poultry, fish, and meat, which was 13.8%, fresh fruits and vegetables, which was 8.1%, and eggs, which was 11.2%. So the conflict had contributed to further price hikes. Nothing that you and R contribute a large percentage of certain commodities to the global economy. And they also account for around 29% of the global wheat exports, 19% of global corn supplies, and 80% of the world's sunflower oil exports. This reliance of many traders worried that any further military force would trigger a massive scramble by food importers to replace supplies normally sourced from the Black Sea region. And Russia is also one of the world's biggest exporters of all three major group of fertilizers. We've talked about this many times. And Russia is also cutting off Ukraine to the sea, and that the country cannot export or plant as this war rages on. So, you know, it's getting worse, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse, all right? So, I don't know what else I could possibly, you know, how else it could possibly be explained, honestly, all right? So, it's, guys, if you haven't filled in your gaps, if you haven't prepped your comfort foods, if you haven't prepped your basics, I urge you to do that now. Because I honestly, and I say this, you know, this is of my own opinion, I honestly don't know how much time we have until there's nothing left on the shelves, until we just can't get it anymore. Or until we just can't afford it anymore. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping. And as always, fearless. Ciao.